science and a PhD at the London School of Economics. At 25, he lectured at the London School of Economics for a year before joining MIT. Dr. Daron is best known for his work on political economy. He has authored hundreds of papers, many of which are co-authored with his longtime collaborators Simon Johnson and James Robinson. With Robinson, he authored Economic Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy in 2006 and Why Nations Fail in 2012. The latter, an influential work on the role that institutions play in shaping the nation's economic outcomes, prompted wide scholarly and media commentary. Described as a centrist, he believes in a regulated market economy. He regularly comments on political issues, economic inequality, and a variety of specific policies. Professor Acemoglu is ranked in the top.
It's my true pleasure to be here. This is the first time I'm here at the Trinity Church and the hall, so it's a double pleasure for me. I want to talk briefly about AI because I think this is a topic that a lot of people are thinking about. There's no doubt that it's influencing our lives, and I'll talk for about 20 minutes and then I'll open it up for Q&A for a little bit. It's also interesting for me because I've been studying digital technologies and AI for several decades from a number of different angles, both in terms of their effects on the labor market, earnings inequality, and democratic processes. And there's no doubt that we have entered a new phase. I have long been a skeptic in terms of how quickly advances in artificial intelligence would be made in such a way that they would completely penetrate our lives. There's, of course, specific technologies and algorithms that have been with us for over a decade now that could be counted as part of artificial intelligence, but things that really are capable of performing human-like tasks, I would have sort of thought that that was still a couple of years or perhaps even a decade away. And I've been, completely impressed by what is now commonly called large language models such as ChatGPT, GPT-4. I was invited to play around with these technologies before they were launched, and it was an awakening to see how capable they are. In some dimensions, there's still a lot of aspects of these technologies that are not quite what they are promised, but the balance between reality and hype in AI has certainly shifted more towards reality over the last year and a half than I would have thought would have been the case ahead of time. So I think this is a good time to step back and think about what they imply for the world, for us here in the United States, for the world more generally, and for Armenia as well, because I think the implications of these artificial intelligence technologies for the developing emerging world are sometimes understated and or insufficiently studied, at least, let's say, and it might be a set of ideas and issues that is useful to touch on. So, if indeed large language models have arrived upon us, what is it that we may expect from them? Certainly, if the young generation, I think I have not met many people among college students that I've spoken to over the last few months who haven't spent a little bit of time with these technologies. So it's really in people's lives in one way or another. So what can we hope that they will accomplish? I think if you look at the statements of their boosters or their enthusiasts, there is a long list of improvements that they will bring. I think at a high umbrella level, the unifying theme is that large language models will enable a much more fluid interaction between human decision makers and machines. That's not the only thing that they will do, but if you look at many of the tasks in which they excel, it is about this human-machine interaction. For example, GPT-4 is extremely good at programming, but of course it doesn't know what to program. Programming is one of these tasks that really requires a high level of planning, creativity, analytical judgment, not only in implementing a specific set of steps, but also in deciding what to implement or what to target. So the idea is that human programmers are going to become more ambitious or more time-saving, and they will be the ones that give the objective to the large language model, and the large language model will come up with a first draft of the program, which perhaps then can be improved by human decision makers. Another dimension in which they are truly impressive is their ability to understand natural language commands, and that's obviously only relevant if you really want large numbers of people to interact with them. If you wrote a supercomputer program, super program, that only a handful of people were going to command, then the natural language would be so important. So the natural language interface is precisely so impressive because we want it to, or at least there is a hope that it will be in the lives of many people. Or the types of things that they are truly better than what I would have thought feasible, such as writing text. Not perfect, the context and the meaning are sometimes lost. If you give them a long text and ask them to process it, often they get it wrong because they can't understand what is the main argument and what is original, what is not original. But once you look at the material that's in their training data, on the basis of that, which is internet as of a couple of years ago, on the basis of that they can write quite coherent text, and some recent studies by some of my students at MIT, for example, finds that in simple writing tasks they do better than about 90% of white-collar workers who are available to do these type of things online. And they're very, very good at summarizing, again, internet-sourced information. Like if you have some questions about what happened in a particular historical episode, or you want to know a couple of references about a certain topic, ranging from quantum physics to Michel Foucault's philosophy, you can definitely use GPT-4. So the promise is there, and the promise would be realized if indeed they contribute to some sort of human objectives. What are those human objectives? Well, people like being rich, so contributing to productivity, more comfortable life, better informed decision making, perhaps more easier, more fluid communication. I think those are some of the objectives that, again, the hope is that these types of models are going to be useful for. We don't really have the right word for describing what the high-level objective we might want from them is, however. For example, if they increase productivity, meaning that we can now produce a lot of the goods and services that we used to produce with human labor with these machines, but a lot of people become unemployed. Or people lose their ability to make independent decisions. They become too dependent on these machines. That's not necessarily the plan of the good that some people have in mind. So ideas from philosophy, like related to human flourishing, where it's not just that we're going to become richer, it's not just that we're going to become healthier or more comfortable, but somehow higher moral, higher order moral objectives, like improving human judgment, virtue, meaning of life. Perhaps those are the things that we have to also think about in the future, how they're going to be affected by the large language models and other suite of generative AI technologies. And I think once you start going down that path, a number of economic and social issues become prominent. For example, are they really going to create human flourishing for everybody, or are they going to fuel a lot of inequality? Are we hopeful that in the age of AI we can be better citizens, more participatory in democracy, more active in our communities? Or is there a danger, or even a clear danger, that they may pacify us, that our democratic participation becomes less functional, our community participation diminishes as we are withdrawn into our virtual world. Our views that are, by human nature, always somewhat diverse, become less diverse because we're all sourcing our information from these machines. I think those are some of the questions that we should all be having in our minds. And in fact, if we look at the way that the past digital technologies have worked out, I think there are a lot of reasons to be worried about what the LLMs might bring, especially unless they are carefully regulated. And this is, the topic of a new book that I have. It will come out in 4 weeks, and a lot of research I have done, so I'm not going to bore you with the details of those things. But let me just say a few words, and why I find the worrying path somewhat more likely, or a lot more likely, than the more hopeful path that the enthusiasts for this technology are painting. If you look at the US economy, for example, the last 4 decades cannot be separated from the rapid spread of digital technologies. And AI, even very smart generative AI, like the large language models, are really a continuation of this trend. So how have we done under these digital technologies, which for their time were really as bewildering to many people as the LLMs are today? Have we become huge beneficiaries of these technologies? Well, the picture is more complex. Certainly, so there are some aspects of our lives that have been greatly facilitated. The amount of information we have available, just the Wikipedia project itself, is really bewilderingly complex and amazing, impressive. But there are many other dimensions in which our democracy has suffered, inequality has suffered, and many economic hopes about digital technologies have not come to full fruition. So, for instance, my research emphasized that digital technologies have been at the heart of a huge increase in inequality in the United States. If you look at the labor market trends in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, you see a picture that has a lot of problems. Nothing is perfect, and the U.S. certainly was not perfect. But you had an economy in which low and high education workers both were experiencing very healthy real wage growth, so that the living standards of everybody was increasing at the same time, more or less around more than 2% per year in real terms for both low education and high education workers. You see a sea change from around 1980s as digital technologies, especially used for automation, are spreading. In fact, postgraduate workers working with specialized skills such as engineers, computer scientists, those have increased very rapidly since 1980, but the real earnings of less educated workers have declined greatly. So if you're a college graduate, you're doing okay. If you're a postgraduate, you're doing great. If you're a high school educated man especially, your real wages have fallen perhaps as much as 15-20% in real terms since the 1980s. Democracy has suffered quite a lot during this time period, and there are many reasons for that. I don't think you can blame it on digital technologies, but a lot of research among sociologists, political scientists, and media scholars are pointing to social media as one major contributing factor for polarization, misinformation, pacifization of people in their duties as democratic citizens. And at the same time, you might say, okay, fine, there are these huge costs from digital technologies, but at least we're getting amazing productivity benefits. Well, that hasn't really been the case either. Digital technologies have really revolutionized a number of areas, but overall at the aggregate level, digital technologies haven't revolutionized productivity. Productivity growth in the US economy also has been somewhat lackluster over the last several decades, certainly much less than people who were enthusiastic about the digital revolution were hoping for. And I think at the root of all of these things, there's a common set of factors. We haven't, I believe, have made as productive use of these digital technologies as we could have done. In particular, when you use digital technologies, not truly to complement humans, not to empower humans, but to try to replace them, regardless of unique human skills. I think that is a recipe for improving productivity much less than we could do, and also, of course, not a real contributor to human equality, human flourishing, human achievement And I think that's the path we have been on. And I believe, and this is a good conversation to have right now, I think, because I believe the tendency with these AI technologies is very much to go in that direction. In fact, AI is the zenith of the types of digital technologies that could, if applied in that way, supersede humans. The whole agenda of AI, going back to Alan Turing's phenomenal work, was trying to find ways of machines to become more human-like. In particular, the Turing test do certain things as well as humans, and a general metric for success in the AI community, in the AI research community, is to reach parity with humans in a variety of tasks. So that is, of course, a very much part of the founding objectives of the large language model as well. And if it goes that way, using them more for replacing humans rather than complementing humans, using them more for creating inequality, I think those are all likely to go on overdrive. In particular, if you look at the structure of these large language models, the amount of data, the amount of resources they need is a huge part of the contribution. What that suggests is that the inequality tendencies of these technologies might even be much greater than those of earlier digital technologies. Earlier digital technologies increase inequality, partly because they automated tasks that used to be performed by low education workers, but partly because it was some companies, IBM, Microsoft, Google, lately Facebook, that were able to make the best use and expand their operations thanks to the deployment of these technologies. Well, the concentration that the large language models will bring might actually far exceed that. It's likely that what the industry calls the base model, something like the GPT-4 in the case of the most popular large language model, the amount of resources that it's going to require is going to be so extensive that one or two, perhaps three base models could survive, but much many more. And many of the things that you might want to do for, say, accounting software or writing programs or recommendations for which vacation locations to pick, all of those will be written as applications on top of those base models, but that's going to be a recipe for whoever controls the base models to dominate the market, both in terms of political, social, and economic power. So all of these things suggest that the path for true human flourishing, using these models for increasing human capabilities, increasing human agency, increasing human decision-making capabilities, all of those become less and less likely if we follow this path. And let me emphasize, I'm not arguing that using these technologies for this type of better way is not feasible. In fact, it is, and it's something we may have a great need for. Let me just give you one example to illustrate that point, and I'll transition very quickly to the developing world and Armenia, so that I leave enough time for comments and questions. Right now, if you have a malfunctioning appliance in your house, or air conditioning is not working, or electricity is not working in your house, good luck getting an electrician. Electricians are very difficult to find. The cost of getting an electrician has increased quite a lot in many urban areas, and that's just the beginning, because if we really make even a half-hearted effort to electrify the grid with renewables, the demand for electricians is going to increase. So this is just an extremely clear example of a trade that requires a unique human skills, and the capabilities of electricians can be much augmented with better information, better flexible, real-time access to diagnosis, solutions for specific problems can be provided. And in fact, as the range of tasks that they are going to need to do expand, this is going to become a necessity. So those are actually quite a lot the types of things that generative AI could be very powerful for nurses, education specialists, electricians, plumbers. But that's not the focus of the industry. So those are the kinds of applications of large language models that could truly be productivity enhancing, productivity boosting, not necessarily increase inequality, and also contribute to the valuation, increasing the value of a diverse set of human skills. But unfortunately, I don't see us being on that path unless we take a regulatory step. But let me say a few other things about the developing world. A lot of the discussion about AI, as it was the case for digital technology, takes place with a focus on the developing world, because these are the places where these technologies are being implemented. But actually, and if you go, I have talked about some related issues in a number of different places around the world, and you don't see the same degree of urgency if you go to Mexico, if you go to Turkey, if you go to Nigeria, about what the future of digital technologies or AI would mean for their countries. And I think that is a mistake, because if you consider the history of economic growth in the non-European world, a major story is very rapid growth in a handful of places that have gotten their act together in terms of institutions, policies, educational investment. And it always happens by a process by which these countries use their human resources better. So from South Korea, Taiwan, to China, Indonesia, the pattern is one in which abundant labor is first used in relatively low value-added tasks, and then it's upgraded as demand for more complex tasks and the knowledge base for that type of economic activity expand. So that is predicated on having a particular type of international division of labor, that low value-added tasks are not under the competition of countries like the United Kingdom or United States or Switzerland, so there is room for these countries to specialize in these tasks and start a rapid process of economic growth. That's about to change quite radically. With artificial intelligence and robotics, the two of them going together, the sort of room for the emerging countries to actually follow this economic path is going to become narrower and narrower, so which means that the emerging world will have to use a very different type of strategy for catching up with richer nations. And I think investment in AI and AI boosting skills are going to be very important, and also sort of a growth strategy that prioritizes which are the sectors where there's going to be room in the future for rapid economic growth. Those types of investigations are going to be central. And I think this is why I want to bring it back to Armenia. Armenia, there's no doubt, everybody knows here, has terribly underperformed over the last several decades, both economically and in other dimensions. And if you look at Armenia, though, it has a unique set of advantages in sort of adapting to the new world that AI will create. Armenia was, of course, the human capital hub of the Soviet Union, where a lot of technical education was specialized, and that's part of what has been lost. But there is now a renewed effort in technical education in Armenia, and I think, especially in this age of AI, I think that's going to become more valuable, but it needs to be really complemented by higher quality investment in digital technologies, artificial intelligence and related fields, but also a more holistic understanding of how these technologies can be used more, in what dimensions they're going to be complementary to labor in the emerging world, especially labor that is more isolated from the hubs of economic activity in the United States by distance, by time zone, etc. So there are a number of questions that I think they need to be investigated. Armenia, I think, is still in a good position if it can retain its skilled workforce and invest more, and perhaps also using its diaspora become more fluidly integrated into the current developments in the artificial intelligence world and in the economy that are being brought by this artificial intelligence revolution. I think there's a lot to worry about in both the United States and elsewhere around the world, and the first step of that, I think, is regular people becoming informed and concerned somehow about these processes, so that there are more questions that come from bottom up and people actually become involved in making decisions about AI. One big failing of digital technologies, I think, is that their path was left too much in the hands of scientific and political elites and business elites, and perhaps that's one of the mistakes that we've made that we don't need to repeat as we move into the age of AI. Thank you.
I'm still going to be very different from the gentleman sitting next to me, so when you try to determine which medicine will work better for me than on him, that's going to be an issue. But then I'm seeing politically there's another issue where when you ask the Supreme Court Justice what's a woman, and they can't give a definition on what a woman is, how do you go see a doctor and they're able to make decisions on which medicines can work on anybody? That's the first subject. The second subject was climate change, where we've never been able to predict long-term weather effects ever. And if we don't watch the 6 o'clock news every night to see what the weather's gonna be tomorrow, we're never gonna be informed on what tomorrow is. And the third one was, well, with the economics data, oh, well, we just saw that the March numbers came out like this for unemployment. 2 weeks later, they go, oh, the revised numbers are this for March. And then when the end of the quarter comes up, they go, oh, the revised numbers for the quarter is this. So how can AI deal with anything where the numbers are constantly being revised and it's being determined by who that does the revision?
Great questions. 3 great topics. Sort of human-machine interaction that's going to be very difficult because the quality of data is very bad. So let me talk about the first 2. Actually, let me talk about the second one because I'm going to be brief. I think climate change is one area where AI hype has been much ahead of AI reality. So there have been conferences on how AI can solve the climate change problem, and I think the answer is that AI's contribution, even under the most advanced path for large language models, is going to be trivial to the climate change problem. Climate change problem is very clear, and the hype that comes from AI doesn't help because, you know, essentially it's a problem of sort of transitioning to renewables, building a better electricity grid. AI can contribute a little bit to that, but most of the technology for that actually is already available. Building better batteries that's not an AI problem, it's a material problem. And there are a huge host of areas from agriculture to production of steel, cement, ammonium, airplane travel, where right now we have no alternative to fossil fuel-based energy. So dematerializing the world, that's complete hype. It's impossibility. In fact, our dependence on materials is going to increase. So this is one place where actually talk of AI is actually distracting and probably will delay proper types of investments in combating climate change. I think healthcare is super important. I think that's a great area for AI to make contributions exactly for the reasons that you have pointed out, that it allows much greater personalization. But also, I would say the current path is not going in the right direction. The much greater personalization requires true human input. There are a lot of examples where AI tools have been given to radiologists or have been used to replace radiologists or have been given to doctors, and it's misfired because there wasn't a true human-machine collaboration. The evidence is that, you know, it works much better with skilled radiologists rather than replacing radiologists. It works much better with doctors if doctors are trained and remain in the driving seat. But the biggest issue is that if we really want a personalized medicine, we need more labor force. That means nurses need to become much more empowered. So that's a great area for the type of complementary AI that I have outlined. And again, we're not making those sorts of investments. We're not making them from a technical point of view. We're not making them from an institutional point of view. Actually, there are a lot of regulations and also resistance from some doctor groups about nurses becoming more empowered. I think those need to change. So that's another dimension that you need the institutional change together with the AI change for some of these benefits to be realized. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to talk about it. I mentioned how digital technologies were used already for the large language models for ill effect in the democratic domain, and I should have added that, you know, we're seeing those in the United States, but the effects have been even worse in some developing countries. You know, the type of surveillance state that has emerged in Russia and in China, for example, you know, would not be possible without the advances in data collection, AI, image recognition, face recognition, and so on. And so I think large language models are going to boost those capabilities from deep fakes, much more realistic misinformation, much better ways of detecting dissident activity, and there is a concern about how these are going to be used in other nations. Now, of course, you know, Armenia has managed to make a mess of its democracy without AI, so with AI, would it do worse? Again, I think the issue is we need an international effort to regulate the use of these technologies, especially the communication, deepfake, information generation domain, and if that becomes sort of the standard, I think it will be much harder for the developing world to also misuse them, but am I optimistic that that's a likely path? Not.
And then, kind of like my second question is, like, we're at a point, like, in my view, that AI is pretty much something that anyone can do with like a computer and the right experience. So if it's really something that's not too restricted at this point in time, how is it going to be regulated by international organizations?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about the use of AI. I think use regulation applies broadly to many things. You know, we regulate whether you can use chemical formula in order to build chemical weapons. That's not the easiest thing to do, but it's feasible. I think the bigger regulation here is what the tools are going to be. So what I was actually focusing on is what is the architecture of the future large language models is going to be, and how that architecture is going to influence whether you can use it for good purposes or bad purposes. I think that is the harder regulation. You know, if you were to ask me, you know, what is my formula, I wouldn't be able to give it because I think it's a complex enough problem that we need more study for it, and that's why I didn't spend more time on the details of how that regulation should be constructed.
If you'd be willing to share some thoughts on the role of AI in the classroom. I teach composition, and so I spend a great deal of time and energy trying to persuade students that the process of writing is something they can very much learn from and that cannot be replicated by a computer. So I'm wondering how you navigate conversations around AI with students and where you see these conversations going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a first order issue. So let me start roundabout and then come specifically to your question. So, you know, I talked about human complementary machines. So what is a good example? Here's a good example that I would give you. The calculator. Calculator is the sort of model you may want to have in mind because it performs tasks that humans don't find very easy. Even people who are pretty fluent in mathematics don't have an easy time multiplying 2 8-digit numbers. But it does not replace humans. It doesn't pretend to replace humans. But even then, we could have badly used the calculator. So here is how we could have used the calculator. That around 1950s, we could have made a decision to say, well, we have the calculators to do arithmetic for us. So from now on, we're not going to teach students to do arithmetic division, long division. And they should just learn high mathematics. They should start from topology. And that would have generated a full generation, several cohorts of people who are completely mathematically illiterate. Because the learning process is one in which you go step by step. And machines are supposed to be, if they're going to be useful at all, they're supposed to be complements, conduits of us completing those steps. So I think for analytical thinking, more broadly than just composition, the process of writing out your ideas, being criticized for them, trying to develop different arguments and counter arguments, doing the research for it, I think those are critical ingredients. And there is a real danger that, you know, GPT-4 right now, for many topics, can write at a better level than a regular high schooler. So, not a college student yet, so it's not as much of a problem for me. They can use it if they want to.
I teach in higher ed too, and I know students use it. Because they
So
tell me to my face.
It's gonna be very difficult for middle school. So I think we need to develop some sort of moral codes around it, but also technologies. You know, one idea is, for example, which is a bad idea. I mean, it may be a good idea, but it shows like the pitiful problem we would be in. We would need to develop new applications of GPT-4 that can recognize essays written by GPT-4. So you see how we're wasting resources in that case? But we may need to do things like that precisely so that middle schoolers, high schoolers, or even elementary school students are actually immersed in the actual process of generating human wisdom and human understanding.
Thank you.
Obviously, we live in a world where there are people with a lot of different beliefs and different ideas and opinions, and I guess one could argue that AI could inhibit one's ability to make their own decisions and form their own opinions and ideas. And then the other fear, I guess, is that they could be swayed in one direction or another, just like social media kind of does today. So how would you go and argue that AI could be molded or kind of changed for people to have different beliefs and ideas?
I think that's an excellent question, and it's a really first order issue. I think that I would like to separate it into two parts. One is, I think, the same concern that we've had with past algorithms and digital technologies. Powerful actors are going to be able to use them either for economic or political benefits to peddle certain types of ideas. Those would be, propaganda, as you'll see in Russia or China, or sometimes even in the United States, or it could be, platforms such as Facebook, generate content that's sensational, filter bubbles, or misinformation, because it helps people become excessively engaged and therefore spend more time on the platform. But I think there's a new set of issues that are more relevant, and you touched upon as well, which is that I think a unique strength of human decision making is its diversity. People come with very different opinions. So if we all go to GPT-4 or GPT-7 or whatever the next version is going to be, then we're all going to have much greater conformity in our opinions, and that diversity might be harder to maintain. So I think in all of these cases, again, I think we will need a new infrastructure, regulation, and also probably new norms around it. I don't think that we can, just like it's in the classroom, we can make these things work unless the human actors who are involved, students, teachers, regular people, internalize the values that are important for humanity to remain at the driving seat. And that means not blindly follow what you see from GPT-4, not blindly take GPT-4's essays rather than do your own work and so on. So those values, how are we going to cultivate them, especially in this polarized world? I don't have a good answer for that.
Today is one thing missing: life experience. And new generation, they grow with the technology, but they losing the other side, become a handy woman, handy man, and that's very important beside the education. If somebody doesn't have the handy personality, and the life is going to be very difficult for them, because we're going to depend for the somebody. If you are handyman, the people today, they're finishing the high school, when they say put the one screw in the wall, doesn't have that experience, put the screw. I don't care how much technology gets bigger, if somebody doesn't have that ability, handyman or handywoman, it's gonna be tough their life, their marriage life, regular life, that's, what do you say for that?
Well, I think that's another very important point, but it actually intersects with the previous set of points. The type of knowledge that we can get from machines at the moment, and I think for the foreseeable future, is going to be very atomized. It's not going to have the type of wisdom, general understanding, broader analytical thinking, and it is a different type of contribution to knowledge and capabilities that human skills enable. That would be a more general way of putting it. Human knowledge is going to be, it's always been and will continue to be more experiential by bringing many things together. Our comprehension is not just a mental process, it's a visual process. It's about touching things, understanding them in their context, living with them. So that's a very broader set of human skills and comprehension and understanding and physical interaction with the physical world is part of that. So this is the reason why I think machines that do something very different than humans can be a complement to us. Because if we are very good at understanding, say, having a holistic understanding of the world, and machines can bring very specific knowledge to it, those two can be synthesized and can be useful. But the danger is that rather than that holistic understanding being a complement to machines, machines start overtaking human activities. So if we give up our ability to engage in the handiwork, in the more experiential thinking, in the more holistic understanding of the world, because the machines are coming and penetrating our lives in the wrong way, I think that's a real problem. And that goes back to the classroom. That writing essays in the classroom is about that holistic experiential understanding. But if you let the ChatGPT or GPT-4 write those essays for us, that's the wrong type of penetration that will then make us unskilled, de-skilled in terms of these very important human activities.
Yes. I'm born 1960 in the Turkey, Kayseri, small village. Only the 4 Armenians family survived from genocide, and that village surrounded 40 different Turkish village. Only Armenian village, my village, they call it Gigi, G-I-G-I. And I born there 1960. I have 4 sisters and I'm the boy. And no school, no church, no, opportunity, lights, water. When I was 4 years old, my family moved to Istanbul, big city. And my mother and my father never go to school. They never educate. We moved to big city. They don't have the job. They don't know anybody. We rent a house, 2 rooms, 1 room, 7 people, my uncles, 7 people, we lived in 1 room. 1 year later, we moved to different location, and all the Turkish neighbors, and we are Armenian, we have a hard time to communicate. And then I started school, first and second grade Turkish school. My name is Armenian, last name is Turkish. We always have a fight. And then my mother asked the Armenian school, please took our kids in the Armenian school. Armenian school is private school, they need the money. And my family doesn't have that. Thank God, the principal, they love us, they took the Armenian school. The problem is the education is, I finished the 5th grade almost 6 years and repeated every class 2 times, 3 times. Finally, they give me the diploma, 5th grade. And meantime, I tried 5, 6 different jobs, summer times. The restaurant, clean table like a busboy, and carpentry, and deli shops. My mother said, if you're not gonna go to school, you have to go learn something, your future. My uncle took me, his friend place is the jeweler. He said, the meat is yours, bonus mine. Make sure these kids learn the jewelry. And I started work over there. And country getting so much political problems. And I sick and tired. I said, I want to go to America. I was 17 years old. Impossible to come America. And get the impossible to get passport too. Because you have to be 18 years old. Or you have to get your family, permission. I got to notary public. I make the papers. My mother and my father doesn't know what they signing. They sign and give me permission to, get the, passport. And I tried to go to Greece. I say, this is the close to the Turkey. If something happened, I can come back because I cannot go to America. And that time only they gave us the $300 to go out. And I make this press that in case emergency, if I get stuck, I can sell it, survive. Thank God, when I went to Greece, one Armenian guy, he helped me. 1 week to stay hotel. And then I tried to find a job. I'm lucky I find a job. And I stayed 2 years. And I say, this country too slow for me. I want to try the America. Only way to come America, come Mexico or the Canada. I came to Canada, they hold me like 3 hours. They say, Turkish passport, you stay, Turkish passport. I said, listen, I'm Armenian. This is my church book. I sing the choir. I'm the Christian. Finally, they let me in. And I stayed in one hotel, like a hippie hotels, all kind of people, they stay. One Armenian guy, he owned in the Park Street in Montreal. And he gave me the 1 room. You stay, they give me the $70 the month. And I looked the job, one Armenian clubs. Everybody sitting, talking each other. I said, what kind of job I can find? He say, only the 2 jobs. You have to pump the gas or to clean the carpet. I said, okay. As soon as they give me $30, $40 a day, I do it. And I carry the dirty carpets from the second floor, bring them down, put the new carpets, smell dogs, cats, And night times I find the club, the big bouncer. And meantime I go to church, I sing the choirs and Badaraks, stuff. And I say, how I can go America? They say, you have to apply the visa if they give you. And I tried to say, impossible. You are 19 years old. If you go America, they know that you're going to stay, they're going to come back. And one day I was sitting in the Armenian club once. One the guy said, you want to come to wash the carpet? I said, why not? And next day we went in American embassy. I said, what are we going to do here? We're going to wash the carpets. And I said, I'm so happy, that I asked the guy if I can get the visa. He said, you finish the jobs, clean the carpets after we think about it. And one Armenian guy, he was working over there like a janitor, he has all the key in the embassy. He's from Egyptian Armenian. He said, come on, stop the business. You finished your job. Then we asked the ambassador. We work 2 weeks. I carry the dirty waters, bring the clean waters, put the cleaning machine. And this Armenian guy went upstairs, ambassador, say, this kid, he wants to go sit in New York. Big buildings, stuff. He wants the visa. He was watching me all day, I'm carrying him. Say, he's a hardworking guy. Let him give the visa, let him go to the United States, see the, things. I got my visa because I was always acting, do something, I'm not sitting watching myself, the luck come to me. I was going there for the luck. And then I got my visa. I came to the United States, New York. Which country I go, all Armenians help me. I promised myself, I'm gonna do same thing that my Armenian fellows. They need the jobs, they need the work, they want the house, I help them. In New York, I was like 9 different organizations. Soccer team, church, AGBU, how many, and all kind, doesn't matter. If they need my help, I help them. And I married, I find my wife in the soccer team. The game, we meet each other, we create the soccer team. These young Armenians, they can find the girls, Armenian girls, they can get married. I was the first one to marry, and I have 3 beautiful child. And we moved Boston. And I opened my jewelry store. Always, I say how I can propaganda my countries, my Armenians. 10 years ago, Boston bombing happened. I was in the bed, my wife put me to bed. I was the car accident at that time. And so much cars going on, the police cars. I say, what's going on? They put the bomb, they killed the MIT officers. I say, I have to do something with family, make a morale, And I make the special 3 gifts. MIT officer, they killed him. MBTA officer, he lost the legs. And little boy in the Dorchester, Richard Martin. And I did the special pieces individual. And I called the MIT Police Department, MBTA Police Department, and that little boy family. I say, I have something like that for you guys, for the morale, gift from me. And Channel 4 came and said, Arto, you did a great job. Something, you give these people something morale. I say, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. And 8 years ago, Beacon Hill fire, two firemen died. That day I was burying my mother in the cemetery. So bad weather, cold, ice, snow, everything. And we couldn't stay in that cemetery. We came home, opened the TV. These two firemen go in the fire, they couldn't come out, they died. And I called the fire department, I said, I have a special piece I'm gonna design for their family. And young man, Michael Kennedy, he was not going in the fire. One fireman, he doesn't feel good, he has a heart problem. My young man said, you stay old man, I go in. I believe something, wrong time, wrong place. These people, wrong time, wrong place, they got a fire and they couldn't come out. And I did the special, pieces I give the, family. They're so happy. And I was reading the things. I heard Professor Daron. He said, this is our proud, marine, pride and joy, marine apartment. As professor, he's teaching hundreds, thousands students, different nationality, from China, India, Pakistan, everywhere. He is showing the Armenians, teaching in MIT, economies. These people, one day they go their countries, become successful people because for him. And I decided to make a ring for him. And he's gentleman, number one. He's educated person. He has a vision, and he has a life experience too. I feel like a brother for him. And I decided to ring for him, and I'm gonna give it to him today.
Thank you, Arto. So generous of you.
I asked him, I say, I have a ring to make for you. I get the permission first. He say, Arto, nobody give me anything, something like this, And I say, I'm gonna make a ring, one kind, nobody has. This is for you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Does it fit?
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
It was a wonderful afternoon with a culmination of this beautiful gift with such meaning behind it.
Don't lose it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arto.
Professor, thank you for your time. Thank you for your experience.
Hospitality.
Thank you that you give me this opportunity.